Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And
One,
thank you. Good morning, Ruben. So what daf is this again? Pei Aleph Amud Beis. And we got up to Pei Beis already. Right, just to review a little bit, let's get back where we're holding. The Mishnah, let's go back a little bit. The Mishnah had said about an androgynous. Rabbi Yosef Shimon said that androgynous is the wife of an androgynous, Kohen, can eat truma, which means that we're sure that it's a marriage. If it wouldn't be a marriage, the Chorah wouldn't be able to, because if he's a woman, so then the other woman, his wife, cannot eat truma because she's not owned by a Kohen. It wasn't a marriage. But Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan had a machlokas about this. Rish Lakish said that it's a suffix. We don't know. We don't know if he's a Kohen or not, and therefore only can eat truma d'Rabbanan. Truma d'Oraisa, the wife cannot eat because maybe she's not a wife of a Kohen. Only truma d'Rabbanan. Since it's d'Rabbanan, so they said that it's possible to eat truma d'Rabbanan even though it's only a suffix. Rabbi Yochanan said that this androgynous, according to Rabbi Yossi, is a vadai zachar, and therefore the wife could eat even truma d'Oraisa, and that's the way he expressed himself, that even chazav v'shok, which means even d'Oraisa. Rish Lakish said that when there is truma d'Oraisa, then can't even eat truma d'Rabbanan. But the point of Rish Lakish was to say that androgynous is only a suffix, and therefore the most that the wife could eat is only truma d'Rabbanan. And Rabbi Yochanan said not so. The androgynous is a vadai zachar, and therefore the wife could even eat truma d'Oraisa, even a chazav v'shok. But now we went off onto a side discussion that Rish Lakish had to say that such thing as truma d'Rabbanan, and the one was very surprised. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Is there such thing as truma d'Rabbanan?" Means that whole concept of Yochanan questions, no such thing. And the way the Gemara goes to prove that there is truma d'Rabbanan, Rish Lakish says, because there's a mission that says "Igul bigulim is ola," that if fig cakes of truma got mixed up with other fig cakes, so it is butter. And Rish Lakish considered that's a significant thing. It has chashivos, since it's sometimes counted. So according to the regular laws of bittul, it shouldn't be batal. It must be trumas d'Rabbanan. That was his proof. And Rabbi Yochanan said that that's not so chashiv. The fact that igul bigulim, chaticha b'chatichos is not so chashiv because it isn't always counted. It's only sometimes counted, and therefore there's no problem. It is batal with the regular laws of bittul. And the Gemara went into that discussion about Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. And therefore we're holding by machlokas now that Rish Lakish holds that there is truma d'Rabbanan, and Rabbi Yochanan says not. And it's based on the machlokas is how much chashivas, how much significance does something have to have in order not to be batal, according to Rav Meir. According to Rabbanan of Rav Meir is then only 6 or 7 things. So these things surely will be batal. But the fact that it says that eagle, fig cake of dates of truma is batal, Rish Lakish thought that must be the trumas d'Rabbanan. Because if it would be the Raisa, then it wouldn't have been batal because it's significant. Right. And Rabbi Yochanan's attack was from the Raisa that says chaticha is also chaticha of carbon chatos. That's what we're holding. That he said, I'll show you that it's something as the Raisa and still is batal. So you see that this level of chaticha and chatichos and igul bigulim is not because it's Rabbanan, because you can say Rabbanan by truma, you can invent this thing of truma Rabbanan, but by chatas, no such thing as a chatas Rabbanan. So therefore, if I found a brisa that says that a piece of meat of chatas is batel in other pieces of meat of chatas, we'll see chatas tmei, chatas tahora says that's batel. That's this blue highlighted brisa. The one says my chatich. What brisa did Rabbi Yochanan find? He found a brisa that said that a piece of meat of chatas tmei is batel in 100 pieces of chatas tahora, and that Rabbi Yochanan says is the Raisa, no question about it, is the Raisa, and still you see that as batal, and you see that the significance of a piece of meat is not, which is the same as the fig cake among fig cakes, and you see that it is batal, that means that it's not significant, and therefore there's no proof to say that truma is Rabbanan. Does it make sense more or less? The outline is good? Well, okay, that's good. And now the price at the end, we said this, meanwhile, we put in parentheses, the price says chaticha of chatas toren and chulin toren. I'll put in parentheses again. That's just today's going to be highlighted, but we're going to talk about it. But the Gemara wants to know this is end of the brisa, and it says that if it would be not Tomei, let's look at it a little bit closer now. If it would have been, the first case in the brisa is the blue, second case is the pink. The first case is where it has pieces of chatas tmeya got mixed in with chatas tahora. Then it says that it's ola, that's butter. But the brisa continues and says that, but if it's going to be pieces of meat of chatas tahora that got mixed into techulin tahora, one piece of chatas carbon chatas tahora got mixed into chulin, and now the question is, if it's mixed up, you don't know which one it is. So you have to treat all of them like kachim, all of them like chatas. So it says over there, lo tala. Which yesterday we didn't discuss that part. We didn't discuss this yesterday, but we were just focusing on the beginning of the brisa that Rebbe Yochanan says, here you have it, that it's tala. You see that even though it's a chasha, it's a little bit significant. It's counted sometimes, culture darkly manos, but that's not so chashav, and it still could be over. This was the kasha under Shlokish. And at the bottom of the page, Shlokish answered, B'nei mocha. You're right, it will be a nice kasha, but it must be the case here. It's talking about that it's dissolved, disintegrated in a way that it doesn't have the chashivas anymore, and therefore it is bottled. Even according to Shlokish, it says kol shadakol imanos. This is not anymore counted. I mean, the two opinions were when you have a piece of meat or something which is always counted, that's very chashuv. If it's sometimes counted, then that's machlokes of Yochanan Shlokish. But if it's nimoach and it's dissolved, disintegrated, it falls a bunch of pieces of meat, small pieces, you don't say anymore how many pieces. You take a bowl full, you don't talk about the pieces of meat. Then Shlokish also agrees that it's not bottle and that it is bottle, it's not chashuv. And that's how he's going to explain the brisa to answer his opinion. That was what we did yesterday. We did a little bit more yesterday, but let's go now onto the next page of the Gemara on the second line. Is that true? Yes.
So it's the clone members of the rotation of is everything that's normally counted.
Sometimes counted. And Eshadach Limanis means that it's anything which is sometimes counted. Eshadach Limanis means that it's always counted. That's Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan holds as far as bittul goes. The Shlokish holds Kol Shadak, Rabbi Yochanan holds Eshadach. The Gemara continues on top of the page. Abaloni muach mai means the Gemara doesn't understand Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish had to say that the Resha, the blue case, the Resha is talking about that it was Nimoah, that it was dissolved, disintegrated. Not that disintegrated is not a good word. Dissolved, okay. That the pieces of meat they broke apart and they got into the rest of the whole pot, and you don't see any more chashuva pieces anymore. And that's the reason why it's bottled. But if it would have been regular pieces of meat, then Resh Lakish would say that it's not bottled. So the Gemara is surprised now in the Sefer. The Sefer changes cases. The first case is talking about Tomei that fell into Torah. Everything's Chatas over here. Everything's talking about Chatas. But the Reish talked about Chatas Tomei that fell into Chatas Torah. You have some pieces, one piece of Chatas meat, carbon Chatas meat that became Tomei, and it fell into other pieces of Chatas meat that's Torah. Over there it says that it is butter. Then the Sefer says, but if it would be a piece of Chatas meat that's Torah that fell into Chulin Tohorim, not about Tomei into Torah, but Chatas into Chulin, that a piece of carbon that fell into Chulin meat. So then it says that it's not over, which we didn't explain yet. We didn't explain what's the difference between the ratio and the Sefer. But the Gemara is asking you, Shlokish, that say that the only case in the ratio where it's going to be over is only if it will be dissolved. If the meat wouldn't be full pieces of meat, but if it would have been full pieces of meat, it wouldn't be over. So why does the Brisa, when it wants to give a contrast, sometimes it's Ola, sometimes it's not Ola, why did it go to such a different case about changing the whole case? Before it's talking about Tomei into Torah, now it's talking about Chatas into Chulin. Why not just talk about the same case, but say that it was not Nimoach? If you say that the only reason why in the Reisha it is bottled because it was dissolved, but if it wouldn't be dissolved, it wouldn't be Ola, so you should have said that in the Sefer, instead of going on to a new case. When you want to contrast cases, do the most simple contrast. So that's the most kasha now in the second line. Avaloni muach mai lo tala. You Shlokish are going to say that if it was not dissolved, then it's not bottled. Instead of the Brisa saying what it does say, this is the quotation of the Brisa, that if it will be chatas that fell into chulin, it's not ola, which we still don't know yet why. But whatever the Brisa wants to tell you, why not tell you the same case? Let him make a contrast within the same case. We're talking about somebody falling into Torah, and it says sometimes it's ola. It should say sometimes it's not ola. It should have said these words. Aval, sister, let's see, it's good. Aval loni mocha lo tala. That's the kasha. Why doesn't it keep to the same case? If Rish Lakish says the only case that it's old in the Reish is only because it would be Nimoach, but if it wouldn't be Nimoach, then it wouldn't be. So why change cases? Why did the Bryce in the end, when it wanted to contrast and say sometimes it's not Ola, why did they have to go to a different case? Chatas falling into Chulin, keep to the same case and say that only when it's Nimoach. The answer is he wanted to keep talking about Torah. He didn't want to talk about. He wanted to tell you a chiddush that sometimes. He wanted to tell you this case. Means sometimes you're right. They could have said a case of Tamei and Torah, and he could have told you a case that is not all over there. But he wanted to tell you that this chiddush, that for some reason the sefer, whatever, we don't know yet what the sefer is yet, but it's saying over here that there's a reason why Chatas and Chulin is not battling each other, even though in the same case, means even if it is Nimoach, both cases is Nimoach now, and the case of Tamei into Torah is going to be battle, and for some reason which we don't know yet, Chatas and Chulin is not going to be battle. So that's the kasha was in the style of the Rice and Mishnah. Why doesn't it keep more to the subject when it wants to contrast something? And the answer is that it had a chiddush that I wanted to tell you, and that's why it changed topics. So Rish Lakish got out of the question. Just to say it short, Rabbi Yochanan had a kasha to show that the shear of bittul must be the significance of eshadak, that is very chashuv, because here it says that chaticha, which is sometimes counted, it says that it's batel. And according to Rish Lakish, it shouldn't be batel because it already has some significance. Rish Lakish says like Mayaskina, and it's talking about that meat was dissolved in a way that it's not chashuv at all. That was as far as we got so far. We were answering Rish Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan is good. Rabbi Yochanan says that a chaticha is not so chashuv. It's not eshadak. It's not always counted. Sometimes you just put a couple of pieces together, a bowl. But Rish Lakish holds that something which is sometimes counted is chashuv and not batel. The chatichos are something which is sometimes counted, and here it says it is batel. So he answers, it's talking about that it was dissolved, so it's not pieces. There was the kasha. Now this kasha has three tools now. We have a kasha that's made. The pink is the kasha. Then it's going to be 3 suggestions for the answer, and the question is, what's the difference between the Reish and the Sefer? Means in the Brisa we just learned, we didn't talk about it. We put in parentheses and we didn't talk about it too much. But the Brisa says there's a difference between Tamei being batal in Tohar or Chatas being batal in Chul. For some reason, it's not batal. Our guess in the Gemara says that the kasha is only on Rish Lakish. That's how the Gemara starts off now. The Gemara starts off and says Ula Rish Lakish, Ma'ishna Reishna Ma'ishna Sefer, and that's a little difficult. Why is the kasha also not difficult to contact? Why is the Yochanan any better? In this question, why is the Yochanan any better? The kasha should be everybody should ask, what's the difference between Reish and the Sefer? So Rashi explains why it's only kasha on Rish Lakish, not on Yochanan. The Rishonim have difficulty with Rashi, and some say that to take out the word Ula Rish Lakish, that it's not only kasha on Rish Lakish, it's a kasha also on Yochanan. The next Gemara could be understood that it's even according to Rabbi Yochanan maybe, and it's easier to learn that way. So even though there's Rashi over here and the other Gersos, but there are those that take it out. So just for simplicity, we'll ask the kasha according to everybody. What's the difference between Reish and the Sefer? I saw in the Masifta over here, it brings down the back, Rabbi Vaman Ahor. Also, there's the Gaonim. They say the kasha is only according to Rabbi Yochanan. It gets complicated over here. Who's the kasha on? Is it only Rish Lakish like our Gemara says? Is it only Rabbi Yochanan like the Gaonim say? Is it Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan? And even if it's only Rish Lakish, there's Rashi's Pshat, there's a Rashi Pshat. I didn't have enough time to delve into it and to be able to give it over in a couple of minutes. So the easiest way is to take out that the Gemara is not asking only according to Rish Lakish, even according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to everybody. What's the difference in the Reish and the Sefer?
What's the Reish?
The Reish is Tamei being batal in Torah. Yes, Tamei could be batal in Torah, and the Sefer says that Kachim cannot be batal in Chulin, and we don't know what the difference is. If it's batal, it's batal. If it's not batal, it's not batal. What should be the difference? So, Ma'ishna Reish and Ma'ishna Sefer. I'm Rav Shisha B'rei Ravidi. So the first suggestion is Rav Shisha B'rei Ravidi. Reish B'tumas Mashkin D'Rabbanan, Sefer D'Oraisa. That the first case is D'Rabbanan. Now we said that no such thing as Chatas D'Rabbanan. There's no such thing. You can say Truma D'Rabbanan. No such thing as a Korban D'Rabbanan. No such thing. So he found the case how to explain that the Reish is D'Rabbanan. L'chora, they can say a pshat, not saying like Rashi now, but even though the first Gemara said about Nimocha, you can learn here that it's not Nimocha, and it's going to answer Rish Lakish also, not like Rabbi Yochanan held, that the difference between the Reish and the Sefer is going to be that the way that it became Tamei is only D'Rabbanan. It's true. There's no such thing as a Chatas D'Rabbanan. The Korban is not D'Rabbanan. The Korban is the Rice. No such thing as a Korban D'Rabbanan. But the fact that it became Tamei could be on a D'Rabbanan level. And the Gemara says that Tumas Mashkin Rabbanan, that the fact that the Mashkin, the liquid, should be Mitame the milk is only on the Rabbanan level, with the rice that wouldn't work. That's a sugi someplace else about the levels of Tuma, food to be Mitame, drink to be Mitame, fluids. So the fact that the Tuma, whatever, we're not going to go into that, but the fact that the Chatas became Tame, that was only on the Rabbanan level. And the case of the Chatas falling into the Chulin, that's at the Raisa level. The Korban is a Korban, Chulin is Chulin, that's the Raisa. But if the thing that has to become Batal is the Chatas Tameya, so we could say it's talking about a Chatas Tameya only on the Rabbanan level. So the Bittul is on the Rabbanan. Leave it alone, just Mashkin, Tumas Mashkin. The liquid is what fell on, liquid is, Tamei liquid fell onto the Korban, the piece of meat, that made it Tamei. And that's only Rabbanan, but the Raisa wouldn't have been Tamei. And that will be the explanation between the Reisha and the Seifa. The Reisha, since it's only Rabbanan, it could be Ola. And the Shlok is very happy with that. He doesn't even have to say anymore. He can say that the reason, even though Chaticha b'Chatichos is usually a significant similar to what we said before, that the Master Kasha a few lines ago. If so, the Sefer just wanted to find a case of the Raisa, didn't have to change cases altogether. It could have stayed in the same case about Tomei falling into Torah and say a case where the Tomei was the Raisa. Sometimes Tomei is Rabbanan. If the Mashkin fell onto it, Tumas Mashkin is Rabbanan. So then it's a case of a Tumah Rabbanan. But if the other case where's the Raisa, if a dead sheretz, one of the dead Shmona Shvatzim fell onto it, it'd be the Raisa. So the Kasha comes on here again. Here's the Kasha triggered. Aval sheretz my lotala. You're going to say that in the case of Tumah falling into Torah, if it would have been a real Tumah the Raisa, then it wouldn't be Ola. Only the Reisha. So then why does it say a fancy case in the Sefer about changing cases altogether, talking about Kachim falling into Chulin? Keep to the same case. Talk about Tomei falling into Torah, and the case is that is the Raisa, so it's not Ola. And the Tanya Sefer how come the Sefer gives a case about Chatas falling into Chulin in order to take a case of the Raisa? That's all you want to find. You want to find a case of the Raisa. Let's keep to the same case. That it's a case that the Reisha is only making when it's a Tumah Rabbanan, which is called Tumas Mashkin over here. But if it will be a Tumah Raisa, it will be Batal. So we're attacking Rav Shisha Beid Avidi if the whole point that the Raisa is differentiating is between a Bittul on a Rabbanan level or Bittul at the Raisa level, it didn't have to change cases so extreme. Talk about first Tumah and Tara and then talk about Kachim into Chulin. Keep talking about Tumah and Tara and say if the Tumah was Rabbanan, it is Batal. If the Tumah is the Raisa, it's not Batal. And the answer, the same kind of thing Tara says before, Tahora, but Tahoros are the flame. He wanted the same thing the Gemara said a couple of lines ago. The Gemara wants to tell you this Kiddush that even if everything is Torah, also I can find you a case which is not batal. It's true. I can find you a case of Tamei. I want to tell you this Kiddush of Kachim into Chulin. I could have told you the case also of Tamei into Torah. He wanted to talk about this case. So that was the first teretz, and it passed. This first teretz passed. The way we're learning is going according to Rabbi Yochanan also. Maybe it has to be explained. But the difficulty in this part that I just said is that Rabbi Yochanan before brought a raya that Chaticha is Chashav and you see that as batal. He held that as the right. So this teretz seems to be saying that as Rabbanan now. So there are some hurdles in this shot also, but we have some idea of a difference between the Reish and the Sefer. Rav Amar, another explanation to say what the difference between the Reish and the Sefer is. Reish is a lav, Sefer is a koresh. The first case was that Tamei kachim, Tamei meat, Tamei chatas fell into Torah chatas. What is the issue of eating a Tamei chatas? It's only a lav. It means that the big punishment is when a person is Tamei and he eats kachim. But if the kachim is Tamei, it's also asa. Even a Torah person is not allowed to eat the kachim if it became Tamei, but it's only a lav, it's not koresh. There's no chi of koresh for eating kachim that became Tamei. But the second case, the Sefer is talking about that a piece of chatas tohor fell into chulin torin, so that piece of chatas tohor, it is chayv koresh for a zar to eat it. If a non-kohen, you have these pieces of meat that got mixed up. So the danger over here, the problem is that there's a piece of kachim. If a non-kohen is going to eat it, it's chayv koresh. So the Sefer is more chamor. Both of them are deraisa, but the first one is only a isor lav, it's only a lo saseh, that not to eat kachim tmeim. That if it's not batal, means we're talking about to be mevatel the isser, the problem. What's the problem? What's the isser in the reisha? Being mevatel the isser of a lav, that you have a piece of chatas tamei, and you can end up eating it if it's came batal in other pieces of chatas torah. What's the problem? That you might be eating the chatas tamei. To eat chatas tamei is only isser lav. But in the sefer where this is a non-kohen is going to be eating this meat, and one of the pieces is a chatas tahora. So for zar to eat kachim is a chiv kares. So that's why we're more machmer in the sefer. But the Gemara rejects this because Rabbi himself doesn't hold it. But Rabbi Udamar called by the Brisa lo shnei salav lo shnei sekares. That Rabbi himself says someplace else, not in our subject. He says someplace else that on the level of the Brisa we don't differentiate that in the Brisa some is more chomer than the other. That the kares is more chomer. If it's in the Brisa, it has the same level. Says Pash Bittel. The Gemara doesn't see that you should differentiate between the two levels of how chomer the Brisa is. So the Gemara says Kasha that Rabbi Lishitaso he doesn't fit with this pshat. And now comes the third pshat, which maybe is the easiest one, but the Gemara rejects it. The case of the Reisha, let's go back again. The first case was that Tameh fell into Tohar. Tameh fell into Tohar. Is there any way, if you say it's not batal, if you say it's not batal, is there any, what are you going to do with it? If you have a piece of Tameh kachim that fell into Tohar kachim, and you say it's not batal. So you have one piece of meat over here that makes the problem, that it's a piece of chatas tameh. So you have to treat everything like it's chatas tameh. What do you do with chatas tameh? You can't eat it. Nobody can eat it. You can't eat it. Nobody can eat it. Maybe you're not going to burn it because the rest of it is chatas tar, but you have to leave it till it gets spoiled and ibutsura, and then you're going to burn it. So there's nothing to do with it. So in the Reisha, there's no choice. If you're not going to be mevatel it, then it's going to be also for everybody. But the sefer, let's look at the sefer. You had chatas tar that fell into chulin torim. Let's say it's not batal. If you say it's not batal, what are you going to do with it? You have to treat everything like chatas tar. Right? You have one piece of meat. You have a piece of chatas meat, tohar, that fell into 100 pieces of chatas pulin tohar. So if you say it's not, if you say it's batal, then a zar could eat it. A non-kohen can eat it because everything became batal. It's not there anymore. It lost its identity. But if you say it's not batal, then who's going to eat it? Only a kohen. But it's not going to go to waste. The kohen's going to eat it. So the Rashi suggests that that's called davar sheish lo matirin. Davar sheish lo matirin means a fil bela flo batal doesn't become batal because why rely on bittul in order to say that it's not here and you make that a smutter. If anyway you're going to be able to use it and eat it, whatever, in a permissible way. Like let's say Yontif is a case. We just mentioned an easy case coming up tomorrow or 2 days. We don't have eggs. We don't have the situation of eggs being born in our backyard because we don't have chickens nowadays because we just buy it ready from the farm. But in the olden days, everyone had a chicken in their house, and the halach is that a beitza is not the b'yomtiv. The first mission in beitza. Why is it called Masechus beitza? Beitza is not the b'yomtiv. That you're not allowed to. The egg that was born on yontiv is muktzah. You're not allowed to eat it. What do you have to do? You have to wait till after yontiv. So okay. Now, what if this one egg fell into 100 eggs? You don't know which one it is. You had a bunch of eggs, and one egg that was born on yontiv fell into many eggs. So you would say usually bittul. Okay, there's one egg out of 100.
You could use it tomorrow.
Right,
so
right. Here the lach is davar sheish lo matirin that since tomorrow you could eat it without any problem. So we're not going to say bittul because davar sheish lo matirin is the thing which is going to become mutter anyway. So here, Rashi suggests that it's very similar because it's true that you're not going to be able to even the zar is not going to be able to eat it, but the kohen's going to be able to eat it. So there's less reason to be mevatel it. Don't rely on bittul if anyway it's going to become permissible to somebody else. The first case. Here's not after yontif. That's just one case. Here's talking about that no zman over here. Here we're talking about a piece of chatas tor fell into chulin tor. So it's not going to be a time factor, but it's going to be we're going to tell the Yisrael don't eat it, let the kohen eat it. Why do you have to eat it and rely on bittul? Let the kohen eat it without bittul. So in the ratio where if you're not going to rely on bittul, so then it's us with everybody. So then we'll do bittul because there's the other choice is that everything's going to go to waste. But in the sefer where there's an eitzah that a kohen should eat it, it's davar sheish lo matirin. So there we won't rely on bittul. That's Rav Ashi's teretz. Rav Ashi Yomar. Sefer mishum davar sheish lo matirin. V'chol davar sheish lo matirin. I feel well for bittul. Since there's a way to use it beheter without relying on bittul, so do that and don't rely on bittul. But in the ratio that if you don't rely on bittul, it's going to go to waste. So then rely on bittul. But the Gemara doesn't like that. Rav Ashi is a mistake. The man, to who are we talking? Ila Kohen Mishvashari. Ila Yisrael La'olam Asam. The Gemara doesn't accept that you don't eat it, somebody else could eat it. If the same person could eat it, like Rabbi Lezer is saying, that you could wait until tomorrow, in the case where it's only a time factor. So we say, don't rely on bittul if today, wait till tomorrow and eat it without any bittul. That's called davar sheish lo matirin. But over here, the Kohen is allowed to eat it. The Yisrael is not allowed to eat it. So to tell the Yisrael, don't rely on bittul, let the Kohen eat it, he says that doesn't help me. Like I have to eat it. I want to eat it. So the Rav Ashi did consider that a davar sheish lo matirin. The fact that somebody it could be used by somebody, even though it's not you, but someone's going to use it. It's not going to go to waste. So why rely on bittul and make it mutter for the Yisrael? Don't rely on bittul and let the Kohen eat it. But the Gemara rejects that. The Gemara says that's not called davar sheish lo matirin. Since for the same person, there's no way that it's going to be mutter, so it's not. It's called davar she'ein lo matirin, and therefore should be batel. So that the Gemara rejects. And what are we left with? What's the difference between the Reish and the Seifa? We had the first possibility, which was that first case is talking about a tumah Rabbanan, and that's why Rabbanan is batel, even though in the Seifa where it's the Raisa that there it's not batel. What did we have so far? We had a whole discussion of Truma B'Zman Hazeh Rabbanan. The whole thing went back to, just to recall a second, that we talked about an androgynous, that he married a woman, he's a Kohen. So Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Shimon said that she could also eat, and that was the question, why could she eat? She's not definitely the wife of a Kohen. It could be that her husband is not a man. And then she would not be allowed to eat Truma. So Rish Lakish said, Truma B'Zman Hazeh Rabbanan, that the only thing that she's allowed to eat is only if it's Truma Rabbanan. And Rabbi Yochanan argued and said there's no such thing as Truma Rabbanan. Now the Gemara is going to continue with that. So far we settled the machlokas. We found the source of Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish got it because he found some place where it says that a fig cake of Truma could be batel, and he didn't understand why. It's chashav, it shouldn't be batel. It must be because it's Truma Rabbanan. And Rabbi Yochanan argued and said that's not the level of significance, and therefore it's batel even though it's the Raisa. And at this point we came to the machlokas that is there such a thing as Truma Rabbanan? And now the Gemara turns to Rabbi Yochanan. You don't think Truma is Rabbanan. You only think that Truma is always the Raisa. You don't recognize such thing as Truma Rabbanan. For some Rabbi Yochanan, Truma Rabbanan is the Raisa. Latanya, there's a Raisa that says, "Shtei kupos." We had this in Pesachim once upon a time. Shtei kupos achas shel chulin v'achas shel truma. V'lifneim shtei son achas shel chulin v'achas shel truma. V'naf lo'elu v'soch elu. You had two boxes of grain. Let's say one was chulin, one was truma. And you had under it 2 bushels. One was truma and one was chulin. And both of the boxes fell into, I'm not sure which called the box, but they fell, the two kupos, I'm not sure if I'm saying it enough. I'm not sure which one fell into which, but the point is that you had 2 smaller containers, one chulin, one truma, that fell into 2 big containers, one chulin and one truma, and you don't know which one fell into which. You would have hoped that the chulin fell into the chulin and the truma fell into the truma, that everything's fine. But you're not sure. Maybe it was the opposite. Maybe the problem happened, and maybe the chulin fell into the truma. That's not a problem. But maybe the truma fell into the chulin, and then you're stuck that you had a big box of chulin, and some truma fell into it. You don't have 100 times more. Truma has to be bottled in 100. You don't have so many times more. And what do you do now? So you don't know. So it says here that you're allowed to rely. You're allowed to. You're permitted. Means that the truma box is truma, fine, and the chulin box remains chulin. And you as shani omer, because I say, means I'm allowed to assume truma l'sof, truma nafla, the chulin b'sof chulin nafla. I rely on the happy scenario. Means the 2 scenarios could have happened. So I rely that the good scenario happened, that the chulin luckily fell into the chulin, and the truma luckily fell into the truma, and I don't have any problem with the chulin. With the chulin, I don't say that the truma fell into the chulin. Now, why should that be? That's like, happy. How do you say happy wishing? Wishful thinking.
That's the end of the brisa.
That's the end of the brisa. Now, why should that be? That's like, you can't just say, we'll assume that everything happened well. 50-50 chance. Maybe the truma fell into the chulin, and now your chulin is mixed up with some truma. How could you give it to a non-kohen? Rish Lakish had this problem, and he says the case is that at least you have rove, means that the small boxes, the small containers that fell into the big containers, it was at least double. Let's say it was 1 kilo that fell in, it fell into at least to more than a kilo. So even if it would have gotten mixed up, you had rove. Means with the Raisa, rove is batel. The halach we have to have 100 times more. That truma is only batel 100. That's Rabbanan. But the Raisa, rove is batel. So Rish Lakish said the case is that it fell into rove. So even on the bad scenario, right? Even if the truma would have fallen to the chulin, it also batel with the Raisa, because it had majority. Majority is enough to be batel with the Raisa. The Rabbanan you have to have 100 times more for the Rabbanan, so they could say Shana Yomer. For the here they didn't activate that Rabbanan, because we could assume, we'll wish that, or not, that's not the word to wish, but we'll assume that the Truma fell into the Truma, Chulun fell into the Chulun, because it's only on a Rabbanan issue. If it will be the rice issue, there's no way to be motivated. You can't just say probably it went the right scenario.
Sign means to saw.
Which-
Sayin.
Sayin is the
And
plural
two
of
saw,
Tusa.
well, do we know how much two saw is compared to a kupa, or we don't know how much a kupa is? That's the problem.
I mean, I'm not even sure which one fell into which. I'm not sure
Well, I thought you
if
were
the
saying
saw,
that the saw-
maybe the
is
saw
less
fell
than a
into the
kupa.
kupa. Whichever one it is, I don't know which fell into which. I don't know how to read it. Which one
Oh.
fell into which? Did the kupa fall into the saw fell into the kupa? Whichever one it is, the Gemara is saying that
One is
the
bigger
one,
than
the
the other.
container that it fell into is the bigger one. More than.
Reish Lakish is saying it's rove.
That's going to be the robe, right? The Rish Lakish is the one who says that it's robe. Rish Lakish says that
Reish
the bottom
Lakish,
one,
yeah.
the bottom one that it fell into is the bigger one.
Okay.
So it's robe. So at least you have robe. That's why you're allowed to assume that everything went well, because only on the Rabbanan level, even if it went wrong. But Rabbi Yochanan says, no, even if it's not, even if, let's say, the same amount or
Most
more,
of the truma went into the chul.
it means even if the truma would have fallen to the chulin, you have a problem. It means Rabbi Yochanan says, I don't need your explanation in order to learn the brisa. The brisa
No.
says I'm allowed to assume that truma went into the truma, not into the chulin, is even if it did happen to be a scenario, it would have been not rove. Let's say kilo fell into a half a kilo.
But it's all
If the
truma.
and that's a bad scenario. If a kilo of truma fell into half a kilo of chulin, so how's that's not possible? So you have the brisa issue over here. So how could you say this wishful thinking? So he doesn't explain. Rabbi Yochanan doesn't explain. He just says I don't need a Rish Lakish's pshat. But the one understands for sure. Rabbi Yochanan needs to say that it's talking about truma drabanan. If it's truma drabanan, then you don't have to say this. Can't say that it's a robe. Even if it wouldn't be a robe, the whole problem is only drabanan for different reasons, not because you had robe, because truma is drabanan. So the Gemara sees in this words of Rabbi Yochanan, he must hold this truma drabanan. Rish Lakish kasava drabanan nami ribuya huda b'inam. Rish Lakish, even though he does recognize this truma drabanan exists, but he wanted to tell you that even if it be truma drabanan, also you're not going to rely on the truma drabanan only if you also have that there's a robe. He's machmir very much that even if it's truma rabbanan, you're not going to say shani omer. You're not going to have the wishful thinking only in connection. In addition to another reason why it's rabbanan, because you have at least rove. But Rabbi Yochanan Kasha, Rabbi Yochanan, he doesn't recognize truma rabbanan. He says no such thing as truma rabbanan. That's what Asagi said. No such thing as truma rabbanan. And he says here it doesn't have to be the case that there's mostly the bottom boxes are bigger, that you'd have rove chulin. So what does he mean to say? It means the Gemara sees in this brisa that Rabbi Yochanan, his explanation, he holds it is truma rabbanan. So the Gemara is asking contradiction in Rabbi Yochanan. But yes, also Rabbi Yochanan says no such thing as truma rabbanan. There's no such thing.
No, isn't he saying that it means that all the truma fell into truma?
Yeah, and that's wishful thinking, right? How do you
Yeah.
do it? So how did you have wishful thinking? Maybe you didn't. 50-50, right? You don't know which one to fill into. You can't be making on such a thing. Rabbi Yochanan can't just say Shani Yomer. I'll say that the good scenario happened. He can't say that. He has to say something's rabbanan over
So
here.
we're forced to say
That the truma rabbanan. Yeah, because he himself is explaining it like that. He himself is explaining that it's truma rabbanan. So he and also he said no such thing as truma rabbanan. So here goes the big chiddush. Bottom words. Amani rabbanan he bana the Amri Rabbi Yossi. I agree that the rabbanan say there's a truma rabbanan. I wasn't talking about rabbanan. That is going in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah, as Rashi points out over here in the top line, the Hamasis Rabbi Yossi Kamala. So let's just scroll. I Rabbi Yochanan. I was explaining Rabbi Yossi. It means if you go back to the Mishnah, everyone's coming to explain this Mishnah over here. Going back a couple of pages. Where was the Mishnah? Here's the Mishnah. That it said Rabbi Yossi Shimon said, and Roganus' wife could eat truma. That's what we're talking about. What do these words mean? When Rabbi Yossi's in Rabbi Shimon, he wants Rabbi Yossi over here. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Shimon said that Andronicus' wife could eat truma. So Rabbi Yochanan says it must be even truma deraisa. Why? Because I know that Rabbi Yossi holds there's no such thing as truma rabbanan. Rabbi Yochanan wasn't coming to say nobody holds truma rabbanan. Rabbi Yochanan also knows there are people that hold truma rabbanan. He's just coming to say that I know that Rabbi Yossi holds that there's no such thing as truma rabbanan. So when he said that Andronicus' wife could eat truma, he had to have meant even truma deraisa, because Rabbi Yossi holds there's no such thing as truma rabbanan. How does? But I do agree. How does Rabbi Yochanan know that Rabbi Yossi holds that there's no truma rabbanan? Now the Gemara is going to explain that.
How does Rabbi Yossi know?
Okay, then we'll go further back. But first we have to know how Rabbi Yochanan knew that Rabbi Yossi didn't recognize Truma Rabbanan. And told you before that that they were arguing if the Truma Rabbanan, Rish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan could say now that I agree to all that. I agree that there's Truma Rabbanan, but I'm saying Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold of that. And therefore, I had to explain that when he permits in the Mishnah androgynous his wife to eat Truma, it had to mean even Truma Deraisa, even Chazav B'Shov, because he doesn't hold of Truma Rabbanan. And that's the Gemara now on the top of the second top of Amud Beis. The Tanya B'Seder Olam. We learned in the Brisa called Seder Olam. It says in the pasuk Hasher Yeshua B'Sachav Yivishta. It says Eretz Yisrael that your forefathers inherited, and you should inherit it, conquer it. So the Gemara Darshans, Rabbi Yossi says, we'll say in a second, that Seder Olam says Yevusha B'Yishana B'Shnia Yesh Lahen U'Shnisha Seim Lahen. It says here 2 times the word Yevusha. Yoshua B'Sachav Yivishta. So the moral is out that 2 times Eretz Yisrael had to be conquered, but not a 3rd time anymore. What does that mean? That when they came in times of Yeshua, they conquered Eretz Yisrael. That's called Kedusha Rishona. They sanctified, they consecrated Eretz Yisrael when they conquered it the 1st time, and they consecrated it a 2nd time. That means after Golos Bavel, and then the 2nd time they came by Sheni, they consecrated it a 2nd time. But it's never going to be consecrated the 3rd time. Why not? Because the consecration never went off. The Kedusha remained. To say Shlish Zein Land means you don't have to consecrate the Eretz Yisrael the 3rd time when Mashiach is going to come, because it stayed consecrated the whole time. That means that it's still Kadosh. The whole question if the Truma B'Zman said the Raisa Rabbanan is if the Kedusha Haaretz went off or not. And as far this, by the way, the Poskim say that Kedusha, this whole sugya, if Kedusha Haaretz going off or not, is only as far as the mitzvahs. But as far as the Kedusha that the Ashras Hashchina and Hashem chose it, they gave it to Avraham Avinu, that's before the mitzvahs. There's 2 things: Kedusha Hashchina and Kedusha Sa mitzvahs. So here we're talking about the mitzvahs. So here it says, if the whole Truma B'Zman is Rabbanan, that means that after the Golos, the Kedusha went off. The Kedusha was nullified. So here it says, according to Yossi, the Kedusha had to be consecrated once, means before Am Yisrael came, it didn't have that Kedusha. Yeshua came, he consecrated it. And then after Golos Bavel, Ezra came and consecrated it a 2nd time, when everybody came to settle in Eretz Yisrael. And a 3rd time, it doesn't have to be consecrated because that consecration never went off. So this is Rabbi Yossi. How do you know it's Rabbi Yossi? Rabbi Yochanan, Montana, Seder Olam, Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is the author of Seder Olam. So here you have Rabbi Yossi holds that Eretz Yisrael nowadays, after the Chorban Bayis Sheni, the Kedusha, the sanctity didn't go off. This is how I know that Rabbi Yossi holds he has no such thing as Truma Rabbanan. Truma B'Zman is not Rabbanan. He also would have agreed, let's say during Golos Bavel, it would have been Rabbanan. And but after it was consecrated a 2nd time, it never has to be consecrated a 3rd time because it stays sanctified. So I know, Rabbi Yochanan says, I know that Rabbi Yossi holds that Rabbi Yossi holds that there's no Truma B'Zman is not Rabbanan. So if it said that Androgonus is his wife could eat Truma, Rabbi Yossi said that, he meant even Truma Deraisa, because he holds there's no Truma Rabbanan. That's good? It was a side point now, just to go back to the rice we spoke about, this ribuy over here, that in order to permit the Truma falling into Chulin, you don't know if it did or not. So it says that Rabbi Yochanan knows that it's permissible. We're going to say now because Truma Rabbanan, even if it didn't have a rope. And there was a side problem about that. I put in parentheses a side point. So this is the 4th line. Since it's Rabbanan, Rabbi Yochanan says that it's fine. You don't have to have that there should be a robe, that it should be good even on the Raisa level. The more is jumping into different subjects altogether. There was a mikveh that had exactly 40 saw. That's the minimum share of a mikveh. Nasa and saw, not also kosher. You put in and now Maim Shuvim is not kosher. You put in a saw of regular Maim Shuvim, and you have 41 now.
But it's the originally kosher.
It was a kosher mikvah. You put in a one more saw of Maim Shuvim of drawn water.
Take out a saw.
So at that point there's 41 saw. Now you take out saw, you have 40. But now the water's mixed. There's no some Maim Shuvim because it wasn't originally it was all rainwater, kosher rainwater. Now you put in another saw of drawn water, which is puzzle. And now the mikveh became 41 saw, and it's all kosher. And now I take out a saw, I have again 40, but now some of the water is mixed. You might think it's a problem. It says no, it's kosher. How many times can you do that? Can you do it a 2nd time, a 3rd time, a 4th time? You keep on putting in saw and take out a saw, and then it's going to be all Maim Shuvim. It's going to be drawn water. And he says you're allowed to do it until Ruba. My love, the Nishtaya Ruba. Doesn't he mean to say this is Rabbi Yochanan? Rabbi Yochanan is quoted as saying that's only mutter until Ruba. What?
You did not read.
Lo Rav Yehuda bar Shila, Rav Asi Rav Yochanan, Adrubo. It's only mutter to do it until robe means you have to still have the robe should be the original rainwater. How come? And even though Rashi says the psul of Raim Shuv, Rashi says is Rabbanan. I think I highlighted that in the Rashi. Here Rashi says in the last narrow line, Rashi says psul Shiva Rabbanan. Even though the whole psul of Raim Shuv is only Rabbanan, still we're not makel only if you have at least the robe. Means that the robe should still be rainwater, even though it's only a psul Rabbanan. So don't you see that Yochanan holds that even by Rabbanan you also have to have that on the Raisa level it still should be good. So before by the Truma, Truma falling into Chulin, how come Yochanan says if it's Truma Rabbanan it's okay even though you don't have the robe? He says even by Yisad Rabbanan, Psul Rabbanan, he's less come onto the robe. Then with the Raisa should be good on the robe level at least. With a robe.
Because the mikvah is.
A mikvah one.
What's the Duraban in the
The psul of drawn water. Rashi here says that the psul of
That's
drawn
a-
water is only Rabbanan.
Okay.
But the Rashi realized I didn't know that. Maybe it's a chiddush, maybe there's other sugyas. But here Rashi says the Raim Shuv is only Rabbanan, and therefore it
And you
should.
still need rope,
You still need robe.
according to this.
And according to the other Rabbi Yochanan, he said that's Rabbanan. That's okay.
Yeah,
So the Gemara answers, "My love nishai rubo." Lo, it doesn't mean that the lo nishkol rubo. It means
so I left to Mishtar Rupa.
that you have to have the robe left. You have to have the robe should be original. The Gemara says no. It just means you shouldn't take robe. You should means 50-50 would be okay. And you don't have a robe. 50-50 would be good. How come he says that if you take robe, if you have robe, then it's no good? Not because of the issue of you have to have robe. Means the robe would mean you have to have the original robe of the rainwater. And he says you don't mean that. It doesn't mean that. It means you have to have to make sure you don't take 51%. If you take 51%, you only have 49%. Then he wouldn't be mat. Then he wouldn't be mat. Of course, you
Don't
have to.
take rope would mean 20 some.
If,
Don't take rope.
no, 20, more than 20. Robe, the altogether is
Oh,
40.
don't take, oh, I see, if you take 20, you still have rope. No, you have rope.
If you take
20 is, there's no rope then.
right, that's what the Gemara is answering. That you don't need robe. The Gemara thought that the Yochanan said leave robe, leave 51% in the mikveh, take out only 49%.
Yeah,
Because you have to still have robe out of a mikveh that's not rainwater. That is rainwater.
Yeah,
That's
he
not
didn't
shuvah. The Gemara says doesn't say that. He says don't take 51%. Take 50% maximum. Don't take 51%. Means but if you have 50%, you don't have robe. So the Gemara said, okay, that's good. That's what I wanted. I wanted that the Yochanan shouldn't say you have to have 51% that the rice should be bottled. If Rabbi Yochanan was marked with that, he should only take 49% away, change 49%. That means that it was marked with that, and you should have robe rainwater against the 49% of the shuvin, which is only Rabbanan. That's the Gemara problem with that. If it's only Rabbanan, you shouldn't have to have the robe. So the Gemara says, yeah, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say that you have to have 51% of the kosher water. It just means don't take away 51%. It means if you have 49% of the kosher water, that's no good. But if you have 50-50, it will be good. That means that Rabbi Yochanan does not how do you say, does not demand that you should have a robe also. You don't need a robe.
isn't there's something I'm not quite getting. If you have 40 saw and then you put in a saw of water, doesn't that extra, you said there's 41 saw now. And isn't it bittul? And now you have a kosher mixture with 41 saw. So when
Right.
you take one out, you don't have a mixture, you have a kosher mixture with 40 saw.
So, but the more looking at it, that we still look at what was originally the kosher water. And if at the end of the whole story, you don't, the way you're saying, you should be able to do it again and again. You should be able to take out, put in as many times as you want.
Yeah,
It could be that you write in the halacha, I'm not sure.
yeah.
But the Gemara's looking at it as you still have to have, we still talk about how much you have of the original water. It's only working with rove. It's only working with bittul berov. But bittul berov, the Gemara, if
You don't
you
need,
don't-
and you don't need rove, you need half. Is that what you're
right,
saying?
right. If you're gonna have mostly Mayim Shuvim, then it seems that the Gemara understands that you have to have, you have a psul rabbanan. We can't say that everything, most of it is gonna be Shuvim, it's not gonna be good. That the Gemara does understand, and you can't do more than 50%. You're saying you should have to even more than 50%.
I guess.
Which
so,
I
yeah.
understand. I understand what you're saying, but the Gemara doesn't look like that. The Gemara
And it
doesn't look at
changes.
it
Once-
right.
Once it's in, it
right.
changes.
And it doesn't exist.
Math-
Yeah.
Mathematically, if you have to, you could put, when you put in the saw, take it out, you're not taking out all rainwater, you're taking out a mixture. So
Right.
if you could do this probably 40, 50 times, it still might be low
Right, it could be.
kosher water.
I have a recollection that the Mishnah talk about that making the mathematical cheshbon is how much time is going to take till you get out the road according to the percentage.
Depends how much it's windy, how much the being mixed.
We're talking the turbulence of the water, how much is going to be mixed. The Gemara always assumes, I think, that you say it gets equally homogenized. That's called yesh bila. But I don't remember, so I don't like saying what I don't know. But I think over there it does talk about it, that making the calculations, the cheshbon, how much is going to be taken out each time. But here the Gemara does say, at least in this Gemara, it says we do want to remain that it should have the original, at least half of original rainwater.
Okay, and he's also, I thought maybe Rabbi Yochanan was talking about taking out half at one time. He didn't mean that.
It could be also. I said I
I thought it was like the vasachat, you couldn't do more than 50%. But you're saying maybe it means you can keep doing it. But
So Rashi says you have to make sure. Rashi says that at all times it has to be a kosher mikvah. It means it always has to be 40 saw. If you
it always has to be 40 saw.
Yeah.
But does it always have to be 20 saw? And it always has
so what's
to
your
be
what's your
20
case?
saw?
What's the case you're gonna say? Yeah, 40 saw. What are you gonna do? You're gonna put in.
Well, one thing I thought Rabbi Yochanan was saying, well, if you take out 20 saw at the same time.
If you do it at the same, if you put it, so then put in 20 saw. He's saying if you have 40 saw, you put in 20 saw, then take out 20 saw. He's saying you can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably you can. But everything will be the same thing, and no difference is one at a time. Now the Gemara goes back to the subject. I'm sorry, one more line. That here we're not just saying that the Yochanan says that you don't need a robe because it's Rabbanan. There's also another thing called Shana Yoma. Shana Yoma means that there is a chance that it felt the right way. There's another fact that we left out. We're not saying that if Yochanan would have said that if it's Rabbanan, you don't need a robe as long as it's a mixture, even if it's the robe is against you, it's still okay. But he didn't say that. The Gemara is answering now that he only said that's together with another factor that there's a possible Shani Omer. There's a possible that we had boxes of Truma and Chulin fell into boxes of Truma and Chulin. There is a chance that it fell the right way. The happy scenario is still there as a possibility. The Truma might have fallen to the Truma and the Chulin fell to the Chulin, and there is no problem. So that answers the kasha. The Gemara thought that the reason why we say that the Truma falling into the Chulin is not a problem because it's Rabbanan. And even though there's no robe. So then the Mordekasha by the mikvah also you have the same thing. How come you have to have a robe? Moshe doesn't say that. I just said over here that's mutter because you also have a Shani Omer. You also have a possibility that everything went right. There's a possibility it went wrong. And the possibility that it went wrong, then I say even if you don't have a robe because it's Rabbanan. But by the mikvah case, there's no other factor of Shani Omer. If you took out robe, if you don't have a robe left, so that's it. You have only one factor that is Rabbanan. You don't have any other factor that's going for you. But over here, you do have a factor that it might have been a happy scenario that the Truma fell into the Truma and didn't bother the Chuma. And now we go back to the subject. What comes out? We spoke about if Truma was the rice, the Truma was Rabbanan, but the main subject was androgynous point is eating Truma. So if according to Rabbi Yochanan, he said that the Truma is the Raisa, like he knows Rabbi Yossi Truma is the Raisa. So you have to say that the androgynous is a Valei Zochim. Right? Back to the Mishnah again, just to explain the Mishnah.
Talking about an androgynous marries
a wife.
A wife, can she eat Truma?
Right. So that was the Mishnah. That's what we're all talking about. That's what the whole subject came up.
Mhm.
And Rabbi Yossi said she could eat Truma. And Rabbi Yochanan said that this Truma is Truma the Raisa because Rabbi Yossi doesn't recognize Truma Drabbana. So it must be that he's androgynous is a Valei man. That's how Rabbi Yochanan is going to have to learn the Mishnah. How come the androgynous wife could eat Truma? The Raisa, because of a shok. Must be because he's Valei man. He's a definite man, definite male. But Shlokish learned that the androgynous is a suffix. We don't know if he's a man or a woman. And therefore, only can eat Truma Drabbana. That's how they look. The two shots not along the Mishnah means there are two issues over here. One is with Truma's Deraisa Drabbana, and one is if the androgynous is the androgynous is looked upon as a definite man or a suffix if he's a man or a woman. Right? So Rish Lakish that says Truma Drabbana, he learns that androgynous is a suffix. The androgynous is still a suffix. We don't know what he is, and his wife can only eat Truma Drabbana. Rabbi Yochanan holds that there is no Truma Drabbana over here because Rabbi Yossi is talking. So if the androgynous could feed his wife Truma, it must be because he's a Balei Zachar. And that's true. What we just said is true. That's Machlokas Rabbi Yochanan and Shlokish had on the Mishnah. And now the Gemara is going to open up that issue. Is it possible to say that the androgynous? So that's again, I really should have to. Here it is. The Mishnah, Gemara, that's a preview. The Gemara is going to say that the next words in the Mishnah that are highlighted is also the words of Rabbi Yossi. We didn't see it. It says here Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, then it says Rabbi Yehuda about a tumtum, then it goes back to androgynous. So in the Mishnah, you don't see. Taisus points out that the Gemara understands that it's a continuation of Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon talking. That the next highlight of androgynous no say be'avalonisa is still Rabbi Yossi talking. How do we explain that? Let's look at it a second. It says androgynous no say avalonisa. He can marry a woman, but he can't marry a man. He can't be married to a man. And we said the pshat is because, let's talk about it. What does it mean? So with the pshat we said when we learned the Mishnah yesterday or 2 days ago, we said because even if he's a suffix on the side, if he's a man, so he can marry a woman. Even if he's a woman, so it's not terrible because they're both women. It wasn't a big avera. It's not supposed to be done, but it's not a terrible avera. But he cannot be married to a man because on the side that he's also a man, then it's mishkav zachar and it's naivsky. So that would make sense. But the Gemara is going to talk about that the word no say sounds like it's a real marriage. It's a definite full marriage. I wouldn't have thought so in the Mishnah. I wouldn't have seen it. But the Gemara sees that the word no say, that term sounds like it's a definite marriage. And the Gemara says if it's a definite marriage, it must be that he's a man. The Gemara wants to prove, like to Rabbi Yochanan. The Gemara is pushing for Rabbi Yochanan that androgynous is a definite male. Because the Mishnah continues and it says androgynous no say, which to the Gemara sounds like it's a definite marriage. I would have just think that it means that he may marry. Tosha points out this whole discussion that he might have thought that Mishnah means he may marry, but the Gemara is saying no, it means more than that. It means that it's a full marriage. If it's a full marriage, that means and it can eat true. She can eat truma deraisa. So the Gemara sees here proof to Rabbi Yochanan that Rabbi Yossi holds that androgynous is a definite male. Let's see the Gemara inside. I just highlighted it back and forth here because the wording is a bit confusing. Where the question is and where the answer is, so I made it red and green. Kasha teretz. How does it go? Kasha teretz. Kasha teretz. Kasha. That's the way to read the Gemara over here. It's attacking Rav Shlokish, and it's going to end off with an attack.
Androgynous no say.
Androgynous no say.
Is a kasha that
it's a kasha
means it's like
on
a real.
It means that's a real marriage. Kasha on Rav Shlokish. The Shlokish.
Yeah, yes.
This Gemara, this whole highlighted Gemara is a kasha mishlokish. A kasha, teretz, kasha, teretz, kasha. That's how the discussion goes. So Shlokish learned that according to Rabbi Yossi, then androgynous is a suffix. We don't know for sure if he's a man or not. And the wife could eat truma drabana. But the Gemara is a kasha, androgynous no say. It says Rabbi Yossi is talking, and he says that he can marry a woman, and it's considered a full marriage, a real marriage. I wouldn't have seen that in the words. Tosfos explains this. That means that it's a real marriage. The Gemara answers, Tani im nasa. That's not okay. Change it. Edit the Mishnah. You got it by the word no say. It means if he married. It doesn't mean that it's a definite marriage. It means if he gets married, it's okay. But it doesn't mean that it's a real marriage because it's a suffix. Maybe he's a man. Maybe he's a woman. But the Gemara says doesn't say that. You can't change the word. But no say katan. It says no say. No say means that's a full marriage. But the Shlokish tries to answer ultamech my avalonisa. It says in the Mishnah no say avalonisa. He can't be married to a man. What does that mean? Only he. It's not a definite marriage. It means that it's terrible. It means that he's not allowed to do it at all. Elamai nisa di'eved. No, say not a di'eved. When we say that he should not be married, it means that he's not married at all. So when it says that he may marry, that means also on a di'eved level. Di'eved. The Torah says the Gemara is a little difficult. The Gemara uses the word di'eved al-chatchila to mean if it's a full marriage or not.
Yeah.
So when the Gemara says under the Evid, if he gets married to a man, we say that it's not a marriage at all. Even the Evid, not a marriage at all. So when we say no say, maybe it just means that it's a marriage at all, but it doesn't mean that it's a full marriage. He's trying to get out of it and saying that the fact that it says no say doesn't necessarily mean it's full marriage. The same way that when it says lo nisa, it's not just saying it's not. It's saying the Evid is not a marriage. It's nothing. So when it says no say, it must also mean only the evidence is not, but lachatchila doesn't mean lachatchila can marry. It doesn't mean he's a definite man.
He can marry a woman.
We said that he cannot marry a man because maybe he's a man, but he could marry a woman because even if he's a woman, right? But so that's how we said the Mishnah. That's good shot. But Tosfos says that the Gemara wants more over here. If it's mashma that it's a full marriage, is it a full marriage even that she could eat truma? So the Gemara sees in these words that it's a full marriage.
By a woman, right?
And that's the question. Is androgynous? Rabbi Shlokish learned that he's only eating truma d'Rabbanan. The wife is only eating truma d'Rabbanan because we're not sure that her husband is a man. And here we're proving it says no say. And the more ends up with the kasha. Amri lo no say lachatchila. No say
Amri,
lechatchila
lo.
mash. What? Amri, we say, no, not so. The Gemara wants to say that if Nisa means the Eved, no say also means the Eved. The Gemara says, no, the words don't mean that. No say
say
lechatchila mashma. Avaloni, so the Eved namilo. The words say that it's a full marriage. When it says he could marry a woman, it means it's a full marriage, definitely. And when it says lo nisa, it means it's not a marriage at
You're
all.
saying it's not a good proof. The text is about lo nose.
Right, this you're trying to get out of it by proving from the words nisa. What no
So you
say
can't
means it's
prove
not
it
true.
because lo
They're
nose
very
means-
extreme. They're extreme terminology. When it says no say, it means a full marriage. Lo nisa means not a marriage at all. So the word ends off with a kasha. That the one is trying to challenge a shlokish. The shlokish pshat doesn't fit into the Mishnah. That a smashma that Rabbi Yossi holds that it's a full male. And therefore he could eat. The wife could eat even truma, the raisa, even chos of a shok, because and Rabbi Yochanan is explaining himself because we know Rabbi Yossi holds there's no such thing as truma rabbanon, so it must be truma the raisa. And also the Gemara proves it from the fact that the word nosei means it's a full marriage, so that all goes like Rabbi Yochanan. That according to Rabbi Yossi of Shimon, the androgynous is a full male, and he's allowed to l'chatchila marry a woman, and it's a full marriage because he's definitely a man, and the wife could even eat truma the raisa even chos of a shok because the androgynous is a man. And the Gemara comes out like a
Not have
Yochanan.
rich shlokish?
So it seems we're not
Nami
going
lo,
to
at the end, he's,
It seems so. And the last Gemara, till the bottom of the page, is now asking a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. Now we're asking a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan. But Miratani Sefer, Abelaz, Omer, androgynous chayav and lo b'skila kazachar, michlav the Tanakam, Sfukim Asafkale. That's the kasha we also had the problem in the Mishnah when we said that it's possible to say that androgynous is a male, So then we didn't understand what was the machlokas going on because we're saying now androgynous. Rabbi Yosef Shimon say that it can eat truma. The wife can eat truma means even truma deraisa because he's definitely a male. And then he says also androgynous no say means it's a full marriage. So they're all saying the whole Mishnah is saying that he's a male. He's not a suffix. And then Rabbi Lezer says androgynous if he had relations with a man, he's chayiv skila because he's a man. That's what everybody's. That's what saying the whole time.
Everybody's saying.
Everybody's saying that. What's my focus
So it's
going
a
on?
problem on Rabbi Eli- It's why is Rabbi Eliezer talking?
What are they arguing about?
Yeah.
By my plea, what are they arguing about?
Uh,
If both of them are saying the same thing, if we had, it's mashma that till now is only was a suffix,
Then of course it would be skila. Is
and
that what we're saying?
yes, if they hold that as a vaday zachar, then it's about a skila.
So we don't need
It's
Rabbi
mashma
Eliezer
since
to
Rabbi,
say so.
right. Since Rabbi Lezer says he's the one who speaks up, said that it's chayv skila. That means that till now everybody held that was only a suffix, which we learned the Mishnah. We learned the Mishnah like that. When we learned the Mishnah, just starters, we said that it's a suffix, and therefore she can eat truma, maybe truma drabana, and like Shloki said, and it's not a real marriage. And the only reason why he could marry a woman is because even if he's a woman, it's not so bad.
Right.
But now the Gemara doesn't accept that. The Gemara came out. We proved the corner of Yochanan. There's no truma drabana. There's only truma d'oraisa. If you hold truma d'oraisa, it must be that as a vaday zachar, and also these words of droganus no, it sounds like it's a vaday zachar. So everyone's saying the same things. So why did Rabbi Lezer say more? What did Rabbi Lezer add on that wasn't said till now? That's the last kasha now.
I said from Rabbi Eliezer, we have to assume the ratio is that it's spec.
Or else it wouldn't be a machlokus.
Yeah.
That's the words of the Gemara now.
Mhm.
But it's a kasha. Now we're turning tables to Rabbi Yochanan. Till now these highlighted was against Rish Lakish, and now we're asking on Rabbi Yochanan. If the Rabbi Lezer is the one who says that he's a male vadai, so that sounds like till now the Tanoim held that it was only a suffix, and you're saying that the Tanakama of Yosef Shimon he also held that it's a vadai zachar. The Gemara answered. Here's the answer. Both of them hold.
I thought that was talking about Rabbi Shimon and the first two guys. Weren't there two?
If Yosef Shimon, right? And now
Rabbi
Rabbi
Yosef and
Lezer.
Rabbi Shimon, between whoever it is, they're gonna have to say it's a suffix. Isn't that where you read that? I thought-
No, this is the answer already.
Oh,
This is not the answer. Bein Lamar means Tanakama, which we say is a Yosef Shimon, and Rabbi Lezer. They all hold that as the Raisa. Does Rashi say that? I didn't look at Rashi, but no. That's I think that's partially the way to read it.
okay.
That both the first opinion of Yosef Shimon and the second opinion of Rabbi Lezer, everyone knows that is a Zachar. So what's the difference between them? The question is, there are two orifices. This androgynous, he has two. I mean, he has a vagina, and there's also an anus, like any man or woman would have. So another question is he considered a zachar? What would we say the smishka of zachar homosexuality would be if the relation they had was by the anus, anal relationship? That's smishka of zachar. But now that this man is an androgynous, if he's a vadai zachar, it could be that it's even considered homosexuality if it would have relations in the vagina also. The vagina of the androgynous is also considered a mishkav zochar. That's the chiddush, and that's what.
That's a derais also?
Yeah, that
Women together, derais?
No,
Mishneh
no.
Mekomos.
We're talking about men.
Mishneh Mekomos.
Mishneh Mekomos means both orifices.
Both orifices.
So that's gonna be the machlokes now. Who holds what? I didn't notice who holds what. Rebbe Lezer is coming to be makel. Rebbe Lezer is coming to say that he's a zochar, but it's only going to be mishkav zochar in the zachris, only in the way of mishkav zochar. But if he would have relations in the vagina of the androgynous, it's not going to be chayv mishkav zochar. And the first one holds that in both of them, it's going to be mishkav zochar. Rebbe Lezer coming to be makel. That's what Rashi says. I feel. I don't know.
And you have this people around today?
Yeah, I once saw an article in Jerusalem Post. Someone showed me.
Wow.
He had beard and payas, beard and tzitzis.
Wow.
Did he have a beard? Yeah, he had a beard. Yeah, it's not a from guy that he was androgynous.
Oh,
Wow.
No, I don't know if it's possible. And he was speaking about himself. Had a difficult social life. I think he lived in. I mean, there's a whole parak about it. The whole parak in Bikurim. The last parak in Bikurim.
He spoke funny also?
No, I don't. I mean, I didn't hear him speak. I just saw an article, a picture of him, and he spoke. He said the difficulties. He said his mother. He said his mother was very, very, very good, very kind, and she brought him up very well.
But he go to boys' school, girls' school.
So that all says in the Gemara. The Mishnah says what he's supposed to do. He's supposed to have a haircut like a man, he's dressed like a man, and so I think that he went to a boys' school.
Yeah, beard.
He had a beard, and when he got up, he was old. He was like probably 30. The picture that I saw him.
Is it yichud?
So it talks about all that. It talks about that. It's mamish mishnayos and bikurim. They say it's a brisa. The fourth
That's
paragraph.
what you can marry a woman.
So they're right. That's what it says. You can marry a woman.
And he's counting for a minute?
I forgot. I don't know all this. I forgot. But it has very many details. It's in the fourth paragraph in bikurim. It's called paragraph androgynous, and it says all the halachas over there. And I forgot the halach. I mean, I did write down the halach over here.
In here, in the Tanakama here at the end, when it says it doesn't say both orifices. So then if you marry,
According to
if a man
Tanakama,
married him, then and he had
any kind of relation will make chayv skila. Because
no,
it's
there's Rabbi Eliezer.
so Rashi says Rebbe Lezer is the one who's come. That last line in Rashi, Rebbe Lezer Savar, he's the one who's making. Rashi says that the first one, Mishneh Mekomos, is Tanakama, and Rebbe Lezer says Dafka like a zachar. B'makom zachar, sim b'makom
Oh,
nekeva.
Dafka like a Sachar. So according to Rabbi Eliezer, if the man married him, is it a law or something, or is it okay? It's perfectly okay.
Probably not okay. It says no save. I probably also agrees that he should
Not
marry. He should
okay,
marry.
but
He
it's
should marry.
not
He should marry.
scheme,
He
just
should marry
not
a
scheme.
woman. Right? He's a definite man. He's a definite man. Everyone holds now he's a definite man according to these opinions. Just is it going to be a
Even
chayv
with
skila? What?
Even though he has a vagina.
Right. But is it going to be called mishkav zachar if they have relations through the vaginal relations?
I see.
That's the machlokes.
You have children?
I don't remember if you learned about it. But I write it. The Rambam Paskins, the androgynous is a suffix, not like Agamara. We didn't finish the sugi yet, but I think it's going to be more. But he says it's a suffix, and if he marries, it's kedusha suffix. And I think he's going to agree that he's allowed to marry a woman, like our Mishnah said. And he says if it's considered if it would be mishkav zochar derech zachuso, there seems to be some kind of contradictions. I'm not sure, but he does end off this. He's allowed to marry a woman. So this androgynous would be allowed to marry a woman. Something on Shavuos. Everyone wants to. It's overtime ready, so no one feel obligated. Just closing.
Mostly Shabbos is going to be 11:30, and then we're going to be a day behind because of Yom Tov.
Well, we're not going to have a day behind. We're already 6 days. Today was 6 days behind.
From where we are.
From where we are. So we're going to learn once the Shabbos is done.
Right.
And
Then Shabbos is done. So then.
And then
Shavuos we're not-
what's the Yom Tov? We'll have like every
What's a
Yom Tov
Yom Tov and then
at the 9:30. So we don't miss
Sunday
anything.
night at 9:30, and then
Right.
Monday morning is
It's regular.
It's like 2 months each. So 2 months.
What time on
Let's say 11:30. 11:30 till about 12:30, probably like every time. What is that?
Announce,
Yes, please.
so my family's having a kiddush for our daughter, who's newish daughter.